So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Peter Pang. I'm the chair of emergency medicine at Indiana University, and it's my privilege to be the moderator for what I know will be an exciting session entitled Managing Up for Vice Chairs, How to Ensure Success for You and Your Chair. And it's actually quite a privilege to be able to introduce such a distinguished group of leaders in emergency medicine. I'll start off by introducing Dr. Hamilton, who's a professor and chair at Drexel University. There's Dr. Sokolov, who's the professor and chair at UC San Francisco. Dr. Nugent, who's the professor and chair at the University of Iowa, and Dr. Dirks, who's the professor and chair at UT Southwestern. The floor is yours.
All right, thanks. I did put together some slides here, so I think we'll go very quickly through some basic concepts of managing up. Get your thinking caps on, get you thinking about situations. And then what we'll do is each of the four chairs will give their latest managing up dilemma, and then we'll open it up to the floor for folks who are have specific questions or concerns or just want advice on managing up. So the basic principles that I think you really need to take away from here is that if you're struggling with a situation where you feel like you're managing up, get over it. We're all managing up. We all have a boss. The vice chair might report to the chair, but the chair is reporting to other people. And we're all trying to find a way to get our organization moving in the same direction. And so managing up is part of that. And in particular, facilitating success for your leadership is a characteristic of what we call good fellowship. And it's very important to understand that being able to lead and follow bidirectionally is very, very valuable. One of my very favorite sayings is every bad interaction is based on an unmet expectation. And so one of the basic principles is that when you feel like you are in a situation where you're managing up, you need to understand and discuss the expectation that your supervisor or your leader or your chair is setting forth for you. And also understand the basis for it. Why am I being asked to do what I'm being asked to do? And use the time to educate the chair about your point of view, listen to the chair, and honestly get some face time. Time and extended communication are definitely your ally. I like to take a little bit of a allegorical approach to this, there are players in this game. The dragons, which I will sometimes refer to the chairs, but in my life there are different dragons. These are the important people who can set fire to you. There's the lions, the people who are very powerful, but they mostly lay around in the sun and not do much. And then there's the rest of the animals, the hippos and the little birds that pick off insects off these big animals. And we all have one of these really, roles that we play and that we are dealing with on the other side of the coin. And so one of the concepts you need to really start thinking about is how you interact with a request made of you. And I like to take a very sort of Zen concept here and say that you can decide how you're going to obey. You can obey your chair slowly, and that will make the chair's missive to you seem difficult to achieve and look like it has some great importance and a worthy investment of your time. You can obey too quickly, and then the chair will be fearful that you're sort of rash and may not ask you to do things again, which might be a good thing. You can obey partially, and you could then somehow save the chair from a bad decision. You can obey badly, which is a dangerous ploy, but sometimes gets you out of future requests. And you can obey with a full heart. And that's the concept we're trying to see if you can acquire today. There is also a very, very elusive ability of resting on the three-legged stool of non-obeying, which is to obey in a wrong way. In other words, to take your task and do it somewhat differently, or to engage in what I like to call pestering disputation, which is to ask and ask and ask more and more questions to sort of refine the request. And then you can obey and non-obey, which is to agree to do it and then don't. And also a very tricky approach. Ultimately, you want to be able to say that you can handle the chair or handle your boss, or handle the CEO or the president. And that's ultimately the goal of what you're trying to accomplish. And so you need to understand what that's all about. So if you look at a graph of chair handlers by their power level, you'll realize that the executive assistant has tremendous power over the chair, whereas the CEO has next to none. And somewhere in between is the environmental service person that cleans the chair's office at 7 o'clock, the head paramedic, the chief medical officer. And the understanding of this graph is that the amount of time you spend with the chair and get to know them and work with them closely often determines how much influence you have over them. So you need to develop certain chair handling skills. And I've categorized them here for you. So there's some giving skills where you give credit to the chair for work the chair did not do. That's always appreciated. You can go ahead and have a nice chat, no agenda chat with the chair. And there are a lot of people who seem to be able to master this, just to come and BS about something in particular that has nothing to do with the department. You can leave the chair alone, which the chair loves, but the executive assistant seems to know how to manage all that. You can show gratitude to the chair, which is always a wise approach. And you might want to rethink some of your snarky comments at faculty meeting. And you can feed the chair, which is something I really want to emphasize because chairs love data. So you really want to become a chair feeder. And most importantly, you can protect the chair from harm because chairs often do things that are unwise and they must be steered away from this horrible decision that they're making. So here's a good example of feeding the chair. You know, the chair wants you to sort out the traffic jam. And you realize that this is mission impossible for admissions. So you just say, you feed them a steady diet of statistics every week. That's a great way to go. Protecting the chair from harm. You can, go to the meetings with chairs and make sure they realize that the millennial across the room is actually the new CFO. So they don't make snarky comments about finance. Always show gratitude. Here's a chart of the chair influencer scale relative to whether the chair has shown gratitude or not. Praising the chair is a very, very difficult balance. 100% praise, the chair will not believe you. Tiny bit of criticism is necessary. It's a little bit like, I like to say, it's like pepperoncino, just put a dash in there to keep the chair's interest. And eventually you want to become a chair handler. That's your goal, to be able to direct the chair in any direction that you want the chair to go. And you need to realize that there are two columns with regard to the chair. The chair, there are things the chair knows more about you than you do. And there's things you know more about than the chair does. So the chair knows what it wants, what it doesn't want. It knows your job. It's probably done your job. It knows all the details of department operations, the history of medicine since Osler, how to crush enemies and make friends, the finances of the department. But what the chair doesn't know is how other people feel about the chair and what is actually going on. And these are two important things that you possess that the chair really relies on you for. But there's a word of caution here, and that is that if you get very good at handling the chair, you have to decide how you're going to use that power. You don't want to fly around the kingdom smoting your enemies with fire. It might be satisfying, but it ultimately leads to disaster. One final note before you decide you're going to become a chair handler. It's not about loving your chair or hating your chair. And you might want to think about getting some alternative behaviors or activities such as being indifferent to your chair, improving your relationships to loved ones, enjoying food and drink, paying more attention to working in the ED, or just working out more. So this is obviously based on a pretty whimsical approach to things. You can hear my podcast on this at emtalkscast.com. And I relied heavily on this book, Throwing the Elephants, Zen and the Art of Managing Up, which you can get on Amazon. It's a great book and contains a lot of the missives that I put together here. So that was just a quick, a little fun start. I hope you enjoyed it. And now I think what we're going to do is start sharing our own dilemmas. I'm going to go first. I literally got an email a week ago that went something like this. hey, doc, now that COVID is over, we need to reduce the left without being seen to below 2% again. Send me something next week and we'll meet and go over what your plan will be. Now, of course, right, the place is still a disaster. We're boarding like crazy. Nurses are calling out, so we're understaffed. There's no beds upstairs. And I have to figure out how to manage this, the CEO's expectation that suddenly, quote, COVID is over, and I'm going to magically turn around some metrics in the department. Andy, Peter, Deb, do you have managing up concerns right now that you want to share?
Sure. Andy, do you want to go or?
Go ahead, Peter.
Oh, sure. Well, first of all, I was just going to say, just commenting on the case that you just raised, while not knowing the specific solution, I will say that even though it's kind of like challenges and opportunities, right? Like every challenge can be viewed as an opportunity. The good thing is when your boss asks you to do something, at least they're talking to you, at least they have some interest in what you're doing. And it's an opportunity to kind of forge that relationship. It's an opportunity to produce and actually be a problem solver and do good things for the organization. So it doesn't mean it's easy, it doesn't mean it's fun, but if you can try to get your head around looking at these things that come from your boss sometimes as demands, more as opportunities, at least you can get yourself in the right mindset to address them. But I'll throw out a case, and I'm throwing out this case not for the case specifically, but more to just talk about a couple of, I guess, concepts that I would share about managing up. So here's a scenario. You are the vice chair for whatever, fill in the blank, operations, economic affairs, whatever it is, and you work in an emergency department, sees maybe 65,000 visits a year, pretty busy place, and everyone's working really hard. And you've never really had a backup call system for your hospital, because basically when somebody calls in sick, usually your medical director is able to just kind of call around, find somebody to fill in. And it's actually worked out pretty well. It's worked out for years. People are happy with it. But it turns out it's worked well for years, but now something starts to change. Things get busier. Maybe people are calling in more. Maybe there's COVID or something going on. You have more sick calls. And that medical director keeps trying to call people and just can't get the answer, can't get the shifts filled. Then what happens is it turns out people are trying to solve the problem on their own on the ground by saying, well, you know what, I'll just stay an extra 8 hours, or you know what, we'll just leave a gap here in coverage. It's not going to be that big of a deal. And things start to kind of fall apart for coverage of the ED and for your patients. So then you have a faculty meeting, and your chair basically says, you know, I think, you know, we need a backup call system. You know, we need to have it when somebody's out, we need to have somebody to call. Well, your group has never had a backup call system other than the one we talked about, and they're not really thrilled about the thought of, what do you mean? I'm 2 or 3 days a month, I now have to actually be on call. And you're hearing comments like, well, wait, am I going to get paid for that? Or am I going to get paid extra? Or how is that going to work? And, you know, am I going to be able to travel? And of course, your chair is thinking, I got this problem to solve. Things aren't going well for our patients and for quality and for coverage. How am I going to address this? And you're, of course, the vice chair in the middle of all that, who's, you know, experiencing and hearing both sides of it. So I raise this scenario not to talk about what's the exact answer to that particular problem, because there's lots of different answers to that particular problem, and it's going to depend on your place and the history and finances and all those sorts of things, but rather to just raise the issue of managing up and managing down. So a few points I just wanted to make. One is, a good leader both manages up and manages down, and you're doing it all the time. You need to be able to see the world through both the eyes of your boss, whether that's your chair, CEO, dean, whatever it is, program director, whoever it is, as well as your staff or your faculty or your trainees or whoever it is. So you constantly need to be able to look both up and down when you're managing people. That's just part of what you have to do. So you have to understand people's needs. You have to really try to get into what people's points of views are and what their limitations are, and realize that people's perspectives are very different depending on what their job is and where they sit. That's the other thing I would say about it, is that there's not just one truth to things. Sometimes there's a temptation to think there's just one truth. You know, the truth is this is a horrible thing, we have to take call, or the truth is we absolutely have to fix it this way. both things can be true at the same time. And as you know, in almost everything we deal with in academia, there are many truths happening at the same time, and it's about managing those things. I think your job is really, as a vice chair or even as chairs for your dean, your job and our jobs are to support our bosses so that the department or the institution can succeed, and that you can succeed as well. But I would say supporting does not equate to always agreeing, as Rich pointed out. It doesn't mean always saying yes and just saying, of course, that's what we're going to do, and salute. But it means supporting it. And the best way to support people is to build a trusting relationship. So I think really it's about, and yes, there are those, to use the analogy, the big dragons that are really hard to tame and hard to manage and maybe have big dragon personalities. But most people, and certainly within emergency medicine, and certainly the chairs within emergency medicine, are like good people, smart people, have done all these different jobs and are working really hard to try to make things better for their departments and for their faculty. And so you want to develop a nice trusting relationship with them. So the few things I would just comment on about the best way to develop trusting relationships so you can effectively manage up are, of course, one, be honest with the person and don't undermine the person. Undermining people doesn't feel good to anybody, right? So like saying one thing to your chair and then go walking around to faculty and saying, oh, I can't believe blah, 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 right? So undermining is never a good way to build trust. And people end up hearing things, it just happens. I think the concept of disagreeing in private and unifying in public is really important for vice chairs and for other leaders. You have to be able to go in a room and have private conversations where you either disagree or talk about different approaches. We know that the diversity of thoughts and opinions leads to much better decisions rather than just everyone saying yes or saying no. At the same time, when you go out and you're communicating publicly, that's probably not the place to say, what a stupid idea. I can't believe we'd even considered that, right? There's a better way to do that. So have, wherever you can, have your disagreements in private and then unify in public while still working together. The other thing I would say is to be a problem solver, not just a problem identifier. It's kind of like the, no disrespect meant here, but like the first or second year or third year medical student who's just starting to see a patient and they gather the history and they gather the physical and they give you a presentation, but it stops after the history and physical and there's no assessment and plan, right? They can identify data, but they're not really taking to that next level of solving problems. And I think particularly as vice chairs, it's really important that you're not just a problem identifier, but you're a problem solver, that you really start to think about what are the solutions, what are the options that you can present to your chair so that she or he can really start to make a better decision and lead the department well. Expressing appreciation, I wanted to comment on that too. I do think, giving gratitude is important, but sincere gratitude, not BS. I don't think you need to suck up to people. I think it's the rare egomaniac that needs that. But I think, chairs and all leaders, right? And vice chairs, deans, CEOs, everyone hears negative feedback. That's a pretty common thing to hear, but people don't hear a lot of positive feedback. And even if your chair isn't driving things the way you want to or something like that, there's probably something good that individual is doing that you can sincerely be appreciative of. So even if you're going to have a critique, you can be appreciative for, listen, I know you're really trying to manage the finances well and keep us all employed, and I wonder if we can invest more money in research or whatever it is, So I think you can sincerely express appreciation with appropriate compliments. The last couple of things I'll say, and then I'll just be quiet, is put departmental interests above self-interests all the time. That's, I think, that a way you can build trust and a way you can manage up. When it's clear that people are just looking out for themselves, people aren't going to trust you as much. But when you can take those hard votes or hard decisions or hard approaches on things by saying, you know what, this may not be the way I want to be, whatever, on call or compensated or whatever the issue is, but this is the right thing for the department. It's a great opportunity to build trust with your chair or your dean or your CEO. And then I'd also say in most cases, value the long-term relationship over any specific issue, unless it's just a critical life or death issue where it just absolutely is the wrong direction to go. Remember that there's, the longer term relationship and your ability to have your chair be successful and you be successful, your faculty and department be successful, are much more important than probably what the outcome is on any one specific thing. So thinking about that long-term relationship. So getting back to the case, I'll just say it's a big conflict, right? Faculty may be feeling one way, chairs feeling one way, but but there's obviously a solution that needs to come out of that by having good communication. And if you're honest and you have a good relationship with your chair, and you can be a good bridge builder between faculty and the chair, you're going to be very, very successful. So that's my case. Questions, comments? What, Rich, Deb, Andy?
Andy, you had a good case you wanted to go over?
Yeah, I can do that. I got to comment on yours real quick first. So the situation you presented was impossible, right? So there's a strategy for dealing with an impossible case and make yourself look good and valuable. And I think that's just a lot of data.
Right, that's what's going to be happening. We're going to have a constant feed of data. We're going to develop trust through a lot of FaceTime. I'm gonna schedule some time to talk about it. The nurses, I happen to find out that the nurses are initiating a pull to full initiative that if it works, we will take credit for as a department. And we're going to, as Dave Wagner used to say, we're going to let some problems solve themselves and not try to, but the big thing I'm not going to do is push back and say like, of everything I got to deal with, you're asking me to do that now, because obviously the boss is dealing with some pressure from above that I have to be cognizant of and then help that person, relieve that stress that they're dealing with. So like Peter said, it's like, we're all trying to do our dead level best. And we need to support each other, even though sometimes your chair or your CEO or your dean or what have you can make you just absolutely insane.
Yeah, my case is something that I could possibly pull off, but it's maybe not the most fun thing to do. And you have to decide whether or not you're going to help or not. And I think in terms of your presentation, this is one of those where you're taking a distasteful task for the dean needed to bump on somebody. And if you do it, then then the dean gives you a better task the next time, I hope. But my case, and if anybody has any solutions here, I'll take them. Is our enterprise has not approved any GME program expansions for about 5 years. Due to COVID, budget, you name it. So there's been this immense stockpile, I think, of 27 or 30 programs that want to be expanded, including my own. And there's no process for this, because in the past they would just take them up one at a time as they came through and decide if they're going to do something. The new CEO and the new dean are like, well, this is kind of a mess. We need somebody to fix this. And I might have been the last one in the room, I don't know. But they said, come up with a process for evaluating and prioritizing all these GME expansions, which sounds great on the surface, but once you dig into it, it's really like comparing apples and hand grenades, and it's very difficult to prioritize things. But going through Rich's slides, I was laughing this morning because he had this quote on pestering disputation, which was a strategy that Rich suggested to me, just peppering my dean with questions constantly by the week. I'm not sure that's actually the best strategy for me, though, because number one, he probably wouldn't like it, but then he used reverse pestering disputation and kept bugging me about where the process was and referring all the other chairs to me. So I no longer am, I guess I'm the best friend and the worst enemy of every chair in the hospital at the point.
Well, now you have to feed them data. That's next.
Yeah. But the upshot of this is I think that I need to come up with something to make my dean look good. And I think by that, I'm kind of managing up to his expectations and hopefully furthering my career another 6 months or so. I don't know if anybody else had any comments on what they would do or what they think about this situation. This is a real one, by the way. I didn't make this up.
I didn't make mine up either. Deb, how about you?
I think the challenge on managing up is making sure you understand the person you're managing up to. And I kind of, to take your presentation, Rich and Peter, to me, managing up is becoming a trusted advisor, right? It requires action, some opinion, hopefully some solutions. But you also have to understand what they feel the problem is. And I think that's really a key part of being a trusted advisor, of trying to figure out what the root cause of the need for GME is, or what the root cause for kind of solutions are and what's driving them. You know, my challenge that I had to manage up recently was it's budget time. And as a chair, budget time sucks. There's really nothing too much enjoyable about it. But I walk into my meeting and we've done a good job. And the dean sits in front of me, he's like, you are a model department on controlling cost. You are collaborating with other specialties to get your research costs under control. You're, sharing resources, biostatisticians, you've increased your grant, your funding. I need you to cut 30%. And I look at it, I'm like, for God's sake, how, what the heck? I had just cut a ton, like my dualist cut a ton. And I'm like, okay, I totally appreciate that. We're a little lean, and in hindsight, I should have waited to do all my consolidation till after the budget, right? Or I should have presented my original one and gone to what I've done, because he had already started the process of actually tabulating as departments what we're spending on research. And so I knew that was happening. I was on that committee, and I wasn't a trusted advisor. I was too dang proactive. And so I had solved the problem I thought was coming before I met with him. And it completely bit me in the butt, because he wants to be transparent and consistent to everybody. So no matter what I had done, he's telling every department to cut 30%. And so I should have, had I been more savvy at managing up, I probably should have recognized that that's what he was going to do and just waited. Right, had it all behind, so I could give him what he wants in a manner that he wants, and succeed, and we'll both succeed. But that was sometimes you just have to know the motivation and know the actions, and those tea leaves are important because you never know what they're going to do. I think I also had one more comment on some of the talks on Rich's talk, and that's about protecting your chair. And I think, as everyone said, as individuals, we don't want people falsely praising, falsely protecting us. I think to us, at least to me, what protecting our chair is really is what Peter says. Let's disagree. Let's 100% disagree. And I welcome those face-to-face disagreements. But as a department, when things are tough, we all need to be moving in the same direction. And that to me is more what protecting your chair is. That's making sure we're all aligned in our mission and vision. As Peter said, disagree in private. But as a group, let's face the external challenges that we face as a department, as a group. And then I think the other thing I need for people to be aware of is being a chair, no matter what you think, we can't be that tough of dragons. There's always someone out there to protect the faculty, right? It's not like we can wave a wand today, throw a big old spot of fire and your job's done. That's just not the way it works. And so we probably don't have the dragon power that you may think we do. And I think that's really important to note. That is why working together is really what we're all striving to do.
Yeah, for sure. There is a dragon chasing after the dragon that you think you're being chased by. And
Rich, I've always wanted to know how you got the ability to handle the dragon enough to burn all your enemies. So if you ever figure that out, I do want to try that someday.
You only get to do it once, and then you're looking for a new job, Annie. Deb, you made some great comments, and I just wanted to say what resonated with me was this notion of, allowing certain things to unfold as opposed to being so proactive all the time. And that often when you're a chair and you're doing that can be frustrating to the vice chair or other folks who are, all of us in emergency medicine are like Action Jackson. We always hey, I know what to do. Let's do it. But there is some value in sometimes just sort of, sitting back and letting things unfold. And then the other thing is that renegotiating the expectation can be an intermediate phase when you're dealing with something that is impossible. And sometimes it's just as simple as timelines or widening out the issue, making your dean or the chair realize that, there are more people that need to get involved in this issue. And then the final thing about protecting your chair, keeping your chair out of trouble is, I think, a great skill for vice chairs. And I cherish all the times that you get that knock on the door and the vice chair comes in and says, I don't know if you know this or not, but, and you go, what? Oh my gosh. That really is kind of what chairs really need. So I would love to open it up to folks, other chair. I see there's tons of other chairs on this. I mean, just gosh, if we just all share our challenges, it'd probably be a session worthy of billing our insurance companies for the for the therapy. Anybody want to share some other situations or experiences? Bad chairs, good chairs, chairs to be unnamed.
I mean, I think what I'd like to, as a group, really ask all of you, like, what have you done to improve your skills at managing up? And I think that's important. Managing up is a technique, and it's a skill set to kind that helps you along in leadership and helps you getting your mission and vision across. And it can be done from a faculty to a division chief. It can be done from a child to a parent, right? It happens all the time. So, I mean, I think the issue is, how have you enhanced your skills at being able to do it effectively?
So I'll throw one. Go ahead.
I can share a story. I'm a vice chair right now, but early on in my career, there was a leader that I worked with, and I noticed some behavior that I thought was detrimental to him or her, let's say. And I kind of had a dilemma whether to share this with this person to help them to succeed in the future, whether to keep my mouth shut, keep my head down, and hope somebody else did it. And I did make the decision to, in a way, manage up. I didn't know that it's what it was called at that time, but I sat this person down and I first kind of gave the caveat that I had the utmost respect, and I was really doing this in the spirit of wanting this person to succeed, like I would do with any family member. And then I shared my thoughts, and I was terrified. I had my CV up ready to apply for another job, but as it turns out, this one interaction actually kind of set me up for really a career of being more respected rather than less, and did result in a change in the behavior, as well as kind of a respect for me rather than kind of being kicked out. So
I mean, the minute you did that, so you became a trusted advisor.
Yeah.
Right? The minute you opened up and said, this is out of a good place, but here I am.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. And that falls into that category that, and I've dealt with some amazingly narcissistic individuals. How other people feel about them is often the thing that they most worry about, because they realize that there's just a lot of tough decisions to be made. So my hat's off to you for the courage to do that, and you managed to grab the dragon by the chains and get it to stop roasting people. Good for you. You saved lives, Judy. That's a great story.
I think it also speaks to the point about, just like with any feedback, it's oftentimes the way you deliver it rather than just what you're delivering. And that's just so important. It sounds like in that case, you really delivered it appropriately, respectfully, showing good intent, versus sitting in the middle of a meeting and saying, this is the worst thing ever, but, publicly, embarrassing someone or something like that. So that's, just a perfect example of how you had a really great outcome because of the way you approached it, which I think is really, really important. I was going to come out with just one other thing about skills to practice. I think a skill to practice is just slowing our reaction times to thing and pausing for a moment before just reacting, because we all have our intuitive, and just like Rich said, we're emergency physicians, we're used to just making our decisions really quickly. Sometimes our initial reactions are not the right ones in these kind of administrative cases, and I think it's really important to slow. I always try to do this when somebody does something in leadership that I really don't like or I didn't agree with. I always try to, instead of just having my reaction be like, I can't believe they did that stupid thing, I try to be like, I wonder why they did that stupid thing. What am I missing? Is this person just totally unreasonable? Or are there other factors that they know that maybe I don't know? What considerations, why did my dean ask me to do X, Y, or Z? Why did my CEO ask me to do X, Y, or Z? That sort of thing. And I think that's just a really good scenario for everybody, certainly for vice chairs. and frankly, for faculty in general, I think it's a wonderful thing to do, is to say, I wonder why they're taking this approach. I wonder why they're having this perspective. I think it's good self-discipline to have.
Anybody else? I see Ted Christopher in the audience. Ted, you said you have some of the most amazing people that you have to manage up. What are your trade secrets for managing up at Jefferson?
Thanks, Rich. So I'll give away my trade secrets that aren't like really trade secrets, but here's number one. Find a way to spend a week alone with your dean. Okay, that is secret number one. Find a way to go on a trip, invite them someplace or her. Depends on who your dean is, but find a way to spend some time. I took my dean with me to China for 10 days. It was the best thing I ever did because he had no other recourse but that to spend morning, noon, and night, 3 meals a day, every minute of the day, 18 hours a day with me, because everyone else spoke Chinese, and so he had to talk to me. So I made a great relationship, and it changed my life. I'll be honest. So that's one thing. And the other thing is, and I'll just say 2 other things. So Peter, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, bad things usually happen on a Friday. Never respond. Give it a weekend, and guarantee by Monday things look much differently. So I never respond to anything right away. You always wait. That I guess is tip number 2. Tip number 3 is to surround yourself with and this is told to me by a dean and by a CEO and by many people. As a chair, surround yourself with 4 or 5 or 6 people who think they can do the job better than you, and maybe 2 or 3 of them actually can do the job better than you. And the point is, if you surround yourself with great talent and you promote them and you side with them and you support them and you let them lead and you let them shine in the institution, then it can only make you look good. And although it might seem like a hard thing to do, it's really not so bad. So that's number 3. And number 4 is example I just did myself. I think we forget, and that the power that we have in an institution, if we have any power at all, is with the medical staff. So if you have an issue, for example, boarding, and you take it to your medical staff, it's amazing how much of your medical staff has no idea what goes on downstairs in your emergency department, especially if you're independent. When we were Division of Surgery about 25 years ago, it was great because they all came down and surgery came down and they were part of our ED. They all knew what was going on. As soon as we became an independent academic department of emergency medicine, everyone forgot about us. And so as much as you can engage your medical staff in your problems and in your solutions, I think the better off, I think, for it. So we've gone to many presentations to our medical staff executive committee, and we outline, I think, solutions. And the CEO loves it because, and the dean likes it because it isn't problems like you don't have enough nurses, you don't have this, you don't have enough transportation, you have too many boarders, they aren't discharging patients, length of stay in patients too long. It's the solutions that you give to the medical staff. And so if they own, I think, some of your problems, it's a good thing for you. And so those are my tips.
That's great. We have a question in the chat. How much of your chair time do you think you spend serving your boss, the dean, versus the mission of your department members? And how much are you helping get the dean's mission accomplished versus getting our mission accomplished? So I'll go first. One of the key things embedded in that is the alignment of the College of Medicine, or your dean, if you will, with your departmental objectives. And if you find that those are constantly misaligned, you do really need to spend some time sitting down with the dean, maybe take them to China, as Ted said, and get them, conversation and time and interaction and time are your allies here. So you really will need to carve out time to spend with the dean, informing the dean, educating the dean, and that can happen in formal ways and informal ways as well. So the answer from my standpoint, and I'll throw it out to others, is that those two things should get lined up, and managing up is getting your department's mission to be on the dean's agenda. And that's, I think, a key thing. I don't know if anybody else has any other inputs.
I agree with that completely, Rich. It's just, you know, you got to work the dean to work for your department.
I mean, I think usually though your missions are aligned, right? That's advancing care, education, scholarship. It's the strategies and the tactics that the dean wants you to take, or that somebody who usually informs the dean wants you to take to get there, are where the challenges are. So, I mean, that is the plus of our job. We are usually aligned in big picture with our deans. And so you try to start from that common place and then work on how you may want to get there differently.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. You're right, Deb. It's that everybody sort of, you know, ends the day with that mantra of like, well, we all want to do what's best for our patients, but we all sometimes completely disagree what that might mean. My favorite is when I heard my dean and the hospital CEO say to the chair of medicine, "What are you doing to help with the boarding problem?" I was like, yes.
Yeah, I'll just say you've got to make, I think, your mission the dean's mission. I mean, it's all about relationships. So if the dean believes in your mission, then it's his mission. You're one and the same. I think that's part of your role as a chair, is to make your mission the dean's mission, because he or she has no idea usually about what emergency medicine means, but the things you're trying to do. So
well, it's worse than that,
yeah.
Ted, is that most times you'll be confronted with a story that goes like this. Oh, I used to do emergency medicine. I did a rotation when I was a third-year medical student and you'll be like, oh, that's great, boss. You know, did you sew up a laceration? You're like, yeah, 2 or 3. You're like, all right, well, from now on, you know everything about emergency medicine. So it's like I put in my slides, the dean knows how to do your job as chair. You are just the annoying person in between them and what they want to see happen. But you have to then turn that around and then educate the dean about the complexities until you start hearing it back from the dean. You know, the dean is starting to repeat the complexities that you've laid out, and he's or she has internalized them and understands them much better. And that's where the data feed, you know, one of the things that CEOs, bosses, they want to know what the talent is up to, right? What grant, you know, and it seems like boring or whatnot, but what grants everybody got, what the new metrics are. I wake up every morning and I write an operational report for 4 emergency departments that goes up and down the food chain. And that's just a constant data feed with an attaboy or a congratulations or thanks. And that you know, executives really, C-suiters really live and die on that, because their fear is that they don't know what's going on. That's a very big fear. I mean, it's a legit fear as well.
I was just going to comment. I think one of the first words that you used, Rich, when you were answering that question was about alignment, and that was the first one that popped into my head as well. I think that that's just a key concept of managing up in general, is finding those win-win solutions, finding alignment, so that you're accomplishing the dean's goals while you're accomplishing your department's goals. And at the same time, by doing that, you've made yourself more trusted to the dean or the CEO or whoever, because you just delivered for them. And then that makes it even easier the next time you have something you want to do or that you need from them to be able to bring to them. So I really think about alignment. I think these kind of negative, batting head, analogies are, I mean, they happen sometimes, of course, but we should all be striving for deconflicting those and going much more towards alignment, because everyone wins. Your boss is happy, they're doing well, you're accomplishing their goals, and you're accomplishing the goals for your faculty. So, for example, if I know that our CEO really is dealing with issues around short stay admissions and things like that, and we think, well, wait, we could have an observation unit. Wouldn't that be fantastic to make them happy, make us happy? We have a way to do well financially with it. It's better care delivery for patients. You can solve all those problems looking for alignment. So I think that is a a key point for whenever possible, just look for win-wins, look for alignment.
All right, so I'm going to throw another question out because I think I love doing that. Taking advantage of all this intellectual power. All right, so think back to like all of us when we were vice chairs or wanting to be leaders, and you can't manage up, just not aligned. When do you decide this isn't going to work and you need to go in a direction? Or is there a way, can you always figure out a way to manage up?
Well, I'll go first. There were times where the managing up was just mission impossible. And I used some various of those obeying and not obeying techniques to just buy time. I really felt like I needed to buy time to allow for the circumstances to change somewhat, and that's really, it's like, we're just going, like we were at department meeting, we're just going to have to endure this chief nursing officer. That's just, it's the expectations are unreasonable. And there are techniques to do that. A constant feed of data, a constant feed of information, enduring long, interactions, developing rapport, like everyone has said here. And then running to their going away party when they get promoted. And you're like, I'm so excited for you. So, one of the things, one of the characteristics of successful chairs is that they often outlast deans. And so you need to put things on timeline. Some of the most difficult, people that you report to, you just have to give it some time, and the circumstances can change. So, now, maybe buried in your question is, when do you just flip the switch and say, I'm out of here? And I can tell you from a personal standpoint, I made a lot of decisions to stay put because of family circumstances. I just didn't want to move from Philadelphia. And that forced me to really consider how I would stay in place and deal with the situation. But it's a good question. I mean, when do you pull the switch and say, this organization is not helping me out? I don't have a good answer.
Now I'm a big believer in the outlasting mode, Rich. I had a former dean that wondered why we weren't working 40 clinical hours a week. And, she was an anesthesiologist and thought, I work nights, I work weekends, why can't you do it? I was like, it's a little bit different situation. So I use that kind of slow disobey strategy with that one.
I one time I had a chair of OB challenge our department in a chairs meeting to say, like, my guys work 24 hours in a single day. What are you talking about 24 clinical a week for core faculty? And I said, well, we don't get to read People magazine in a call room. And then everybody looked at me like, you're going to pay for that comment. And I did, but I survived.
I think one other thing I'd throw out there is just when you're dealing with these difficult situations is to look for allies. There's always some other allies, whether it's other department chairs or whatever it is. When you're in those tight, tough situations, don't feel like you're totally alone. There's usually some other ally that's feeling that pinch as well. And that also helps, I think, with the outlasting scenario, which is, you gather with your group of colleagues and think about strategy together. So I just throw that out there.
Yeah, I love that, Peter. I mean, I think there's always a time, and depending on where you are in this process, that you can leave, right? I think when you get to be a department chair, outlasting probably is the easiest thing, but I think you may not be able to manage up, but you can usually find someone to help you manage around until that happens. And that's really, like Peter said, get the people that amplify you, do the meetings before the meeting, get everyone else aligned. And I think that makes it a lot easier to do that.
You have to get the lions out of the sun, laying around the sun. Very, very difficult to do.
Yeah, I would just add to, if I may, that it's not only the medical staff and the medical staff, the executive committee are your allies. A lot of them are your allies in there, but your fellow chairs are oftentimes your allies. I've been here a long time. I think I'm the second longest chair now with Jefferson, but it's all about relationships, right? At the end of the day, it's all about relationships, and relationships you have with your chairs and with your medical staff is vitally important. And you find a lot of allies in that group.
So I see Jay Shore, I see Peter Pang. I'd love to hear from you guys. Instead of,
Chris Fox.
You got 10 seconds to do it.
oh, really? All right. I was having too much fun. Oh, well, we'll give you guys the last word real quick.
Don't let your chair be surprised. That's a good thing.
Oh,
You
that's
don't
a
want,
great one.
you don't want them to be surprised when they go to a meeting with the dean or the hospital president and you know something that they don't know.
Absolutely. That's a very important.
I think the only
Leaders with
comment,
surprises.
only comment I would make, echoing quite a few, is I think trust is everything and play the long game. I think if you try to win all the marbles on the short term and not think about the long term, it's usually one of the harder things. Also, that's based on my vast experience of 6 months.
Nice.
Well, we are at the top of the time. I just want to see if there was any last comment from the group.
Well, I think I'll make one last comment. If you're in this session, you're aware that managing up is a skill. Good for you. You're halfway there. And I think that's the key. There's some things, some books in the chat. Deb had some great suggestions. I see Chris had some as well. So keep at it. And, like Peter said, play the long game.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to look as a virtual round of applause.
Terrific day, everyone.